And in the season finale, before we head off to the cottage, we have to give out some awards. The MHL award ceremony goes down, and Scott Hunter is named the MVP. He mentions how he's had quite a month, that's for sure. He ends up winning the cup, but he also ends up coming out as gay in the most public way possible. He gets a lot of support for this. He mentions how he's gotten texts, DMs, emails, you name it, with people reaching out saying how important it is, saying what an impact his action made on them. Him coming out as gay has made it easier for them to also come out and live their true self. He also thanks Kip, who for whatever reason is not in attendance. But he doesn't retire, so it seems like he's going to be coming back as the Admiral's captain the next year. Fast forward a month later, and we finally get to head to the cottage. I hope you packed a bag. Ilya arrives at the airport, and in true Ilya fashion, the first thing he does is insult Shane's car. But it's pretty clear that both of them are just happy that they'll be spending the next 2 weeks with each other. Shane reassuring Ilya that no one's going to bother them. The cottage is very private, and he told his parents that he will be away. 2 hours later, they arrive at this luxurious cottage that Shane had built. Shane starts giving Ilya the grand tour, but it doesn't take long for them to start making out. Shane admits, hey, it might not last too long. It's been a while, because the last time that they hooked up was the last person obviously Shane had been with. But what really comes as a surprise to Shane is Ilya says, yeah, same. Ilya, the guy who sleeps with pretty much everybody, has also been abstinent since the last time that they hooked up. It means a lot to Shane. Shane then decides to lead Ilya to the bedroom, where it doesn't take too long for Shane to end up on his knees. But this does create a hunger for the two, meaning like they're hungry. Shane cooks up some burgers, they sit down to eat, and Ilya asks Shane all about his parents. Ilya knows a little bit about Shane's mom, but nothing really about Shane's dad. Shane's dad works for the Treasury Board of Canada. He played hockey at McGill University, which is a pretty prestigious university in Canada. But then Ilya asks him, do they know you're gay? And Shane says no, but I'm sure they'd be fine. We just haven't really talked about it. Later that night, they get together by the fire. Ilya is bored out of his mind, but he also gets really jealous when Shane gets a text from Rose Landry. He knows that Shane and Rose slept together. And Shane kind of laughs because it's clear that Ilya is jealous. And even after Shane explains, yeah, dude, we tried. Like multiple times, it didn't really work out. Trust me. Ilya still doesn't like the friendship. He's territorial. Eventually, as the night goes on, Shane asks Ilya a little bit about his family, mainly if he's talked to his brother since their spat. And Ilya says no. I don't really know if that's a good thing. It probably is. But then it goes into the history of his mother. Ilya wasn't close to really any of his family except his mom. He tells Shane she was awesome. Unfortunately, she died via suicide when he was 12, and he's the one who found her body. And you can tell it shaped him. But you can also tell that he doesn't really talk about this with anybody. So the fact that he's talking about it with Shane, huge deal. Now, while this is a sexcation, they do need a little bit of downtime. So the next day, they're playing video games, or they're about to, when Shane gets a call from Hudson. He hasn't talked to Hudson in a while. Hudson just recently had a baby, so he takes the phone call. He makes sure not to mention that Ilya is there. But Ilya just can't help himself. He wants to torture Shane. So his hand starts moving around. And Shane tells him to knock it off, but he doesn't want him to knock it off. So while Hudson is in Montreal talking on the phone with Shane about his new baby and his family and giving him an update, Shane's getting the knob of his stick taken care of. After Shane is taken care of and the phone call ends, they head outside to play a little soccer, where Ilya reveals a giant secret. He's thinking about leaving the Raiders. He's got 1 year left on his contract, and he'd rather play for a Canadian team. Now, initially, of course, you think, oh, he wants to play with Shane in Montreal, but he says, not Montreal, of course. He's just thinking of another Canadian team because he'd rather live in Canada than have a Russian passport. And later that night, it comes time for Shane to get jealous because Ilya has given this some thought, and he thinks, well, I could just marry Svetlana. She's got Canadian citizenship. If I marry her, I get Canadian citizenship. And she would clearly help him. The conversation right away makes Shane very uncomfortable. He tries not to show it, but it's obvious. He starts asking Ilya, is she somebody you'd actually want to marry? I mean, you can find somebody you actually, want to marry. And Ilya says, look, I have this problem. I have women throwing themselves at me, some of the most beautiful women in the world willing to hook up with me. But none of them compare to this really, really boring Canadian guy with a weak backhand. And that immediately puts Shane's mind at ease. Because if you haven't figured it out, he was talking about Shane. Yeah, I know. Surprising. And even though Shane does feel better, he tells Ilya, don't marry Svetlana. Just don't. We'll figure something out. But that shouldn't be the reason you marry somebody. The two then head off to bed, but in the middle of the night, Shane has a great idea. He actually wakes Ilya up and he says, what if you play in Ottawa? I mean, they're under the cap. They can afford you. They need a number one center. You'd be 2 hours away from me. And at first, Ilya thinks, okay, this is just kind of a thrown together scheme. But no, Shane has given this a lot of thought in the few hours since Ilya first mentioned leaving Boston for a Canadian team. Now, he's actually schemed this whole thing out. Because if Ilya were to play in Ottawa, he would, as I said, be 2 hours away from Montreal. But they could also be together. Now they're not rivals. I mean, yeah, Ottawa and Montreal are quasi-rivals, but not the way that Montreal and Boston are. So if Ilya were to leave, they could link up. They could say that they're starting a charity. They gain a mutual respect for each other. And that way, when they're seen out in public, it wouldn't be thought of as weird because they'd be quasi-business partners. And the charity that Shane thinks would help would be mental health based on what happened with Ilya's mom. It's a really well thought of plan. And then, after their playing days, maybe they can actually be together. But in the meantime, this does make sense. For Shane, all he wants to do is be with Ilya. And Ilya, seeing the thought process that went into this whole plan, can't help himself but to hop on Shane, start kissing him, and then say, I love you. Which, of course, prompts Shane to say, I love you too. And just hearing Shane say those words back to Ilya is a giant relief. He cries into Shane's shoulders. He's really vulnerable in that moment. But for both guys, it's just a giant weight lifted off their shoulders. The next couple days in the cottage are spent cuddling, hooking up, more ideas about how this charity could work, Ilya busting Shane's balls, Shane loving every second of it. But then reality comes crashing down. They were out on the lake enjoying themselves, and when they came back up to the cottage, they started kissing right outside of the window, unaware of the fact that Shane's dad had stopped by. And Shane's dad saw it all. When Shane went to go chase after his dad had already left. That's when the anxiety of what happened really hit Shane. He knows he needs to address it, but this wasn't the way he wanted to tell his parents he's out. He starts freaking out about this, and it's Ilya who calms him down, saying that everything will be all right. Shane knows he needs to go find his parents and talk to them. They don't live far away. And Ilya is so supportive, he says, I'm going to go with you, because he knows that Shane needs him. So the two head over. They're going to face Shane's parents together. And when they get there, yeah, it's not exactly the welcome wagon, but Shane's parents are extremely understanding. And they kind of always had an idea that Shane might be gay, but the bigger surprise to them isn't the fact that their son is gay. The bigger surprise is the fact that he's hooking up with Ilya. Now, talking about all of this is pretty uncomfortable for Shane, but Ilya helps him out a lot. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Like when Shane's parents ask, when did this start? And Shane kind of lies to him and says, our rookie year. Ilya corrects him and says, oh, no, it was the year before. But even with the conversation from an outside perspective going pretty well, for Shane, he doesn't know how his parents are taking this. At one point, his mom walks outside and Shane follows her, and he just starts apologizing. He's like, look, I tried to like girls. I really did. And I'm sorry I'm like this. And she just cuts him off and says, you have nothing to be sorry about. Shane, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you felt like you couldn't tell me this. It's at that moment where Shane really feels at ease about the whole situation because he's accepted by his parents. His mom gives him a hug. She reassures him that everything will be okay, but because his mom is a marketing manager, She goes from mom to marketing manager in about 0.3 seconds. When they get back in the house, she starts going over brand deals and statements that could be made if word gets out. And Shane has to stop her and say, Mom, I'm not coming out. The only people that know about this are in this room right now. He's fine with telling his parents because, he had to, but he's not fine with the world finding out. The group does discuss Scott Hunter and what happened. Ilya actually spoke to him at the awards ceremony, although he didn't mention, he and Shane being an item. But all of a sudden, Shane kind of starts hyperventilating a bit. It's just a lot for him, and Ilya consoles him. And what really brings Shane out of it is when Ilya says, you've got everything you need here, man. You got your family here, your boyfriend here. And it was that word, boyfriend, that snapped Shane back. Safe to say that Shane's parents were very accepting of the relationship and very accepting of their son. They don't care who he's having sex with. They just want him to be happy. And when Ilya and Shane leave to go back to the cottage, Shane's parents say, we'll stop by at 5 o'clock, but check both of your phones. Meaning that Ilya has been added to the family group chat. Ilya has been able to finally find a family that he likes, but also a family that is accepting of him as he truly is. And then Shane and Ilya head back. And that is the end of Heated Rivalry Season 1. Thank you so much for getting this part of the recap. I really appreciate it. Consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you like this video. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. Let me know what you thought of the season in the comments section. And also, if you just want like a fun breakdown, you can head to my TikTok because I was doing my live reaction to the show, and then I was doing a post-game show where I was breaking down all the hockey in it. Some people liked it. Other people really got offended about the fact that I talked about the hockey. But still, maybe it'll amuse you for like 6 minutes. I don't know. You can go buy a shirt or a mug, or you can become a channel member, or you could do none of those things. But just know that I appreciate you just like Shane's family appreciates him. And I'll see you back here for Season 2.